in that economical way. So they do that, they do a needs statement. Why does this business need to exist? They do a market analysis. Who is this serving? Who are those people? How big is it? They do a competitive analysis. And students tend to think, I have no competitors, but of course we all do, and you want competitors. They do a product plan, obviously. What is the product? They do a revenue plan, which is usually advertising, but not always. I had a student last year who had a business in high-end financial and was going to charge $1,000 a month. And even though I'm accused of being against paid content, I'm not. I'm just against trying to do it when I don't think it's going to work, Mr. Murdoch. So they do a revenue plan. They do a marketing or distribution plan. Everyone's going to come in and say, I'll be viral, and they have to push a little farther than that. They do an operations plan. What's the cost? They do a launch plan, because we have this great advantage nowadays. We don't have to launch the whole thing at once. We can launch a bit at a time and prove that we know what we're doing and get more audience and then get some revenue and then use that to build the next phase. And that's a great gift of this world entrepreneurially. And then finally, they do an ask. What are they going to ask investors for? And we've been very lucky in the last few years. I've had $100,000 from the McCormick Foundation that we used to give seed money to, as it turns out, 7 of the students' businesses. And those students are now incubating those businesses at CUNY, at the university. And part of the advantage we have in getting this new grant is that I can improve the incubation services and give them more. Because what happens is that the jury is made up of venture capitalists, editors, publishers, entrepreneurs, and technologists. And it's a great day, it's a fun day. Students have 5 minutes to pitch their business, 5 minutes of questions. We go in, we have wine, and we vote. And figure out, actually, I don't vote. By the way, if you want to motivate students, screw grades. Money doesn't. Money is a great motivator in class. And the first year, this is a little dynamic in this, the first year the students were highly competitive about that. In the following years, they were nicer, and they help each other's businesses, and they root for each other. So I now have 7 businesses incubating at the school. One student, Jenny Avens, is doing a business called Closet Tour, where she wants to bring to fashion what the omnivores dilemma brought to food. You can see her stuff at closettour.com. She's used $9,000 to make 3 webisodes to prove herself, and now she's meeting with major media companies and investors and trying to figure out what goes next. One student is working on an algorithm to help you categorize some of your input each day. I won't say anything more because it's her business. One is about to come out with an iPod app for discussing sports. Again, I'll keep that a little vague on purpose. Another has a site for the Ugandan diaspora in the US and the UK called Ugandans Abroad. Another student is still investigating whether she can deliver radio shows as phone calls in her home in Nigeria. Some tricky stuff there. 2 students working on an assignment tool for editors to assign citizens. And I'm forgetting one. Whatever. Sorry, whichever which student it was. So that gives you an idea of the breadth of this. They're trying to invent new enterprises and do what they want. As I said before, I'm generous about the definition of journalism. Oh, I know the other one, yeah. One's called Notebooks with a K, which has turned into a platform for teachers and students to share curriculum. How the hell is that journalism? Kind of not anymore. Originally he was going to have news. But I don't really care, A, because he's graduated, and B, because he's found that's what the market wants, and that's what a good entrepreneur does. I sat in a meeting the other day where a professor was bugging him that he's working with MIT and SUNY in New York. His professor said, I want to teach business using your tool, and you don't let me do it. And he found a market, and he's changing his business. I had the students from last year and this year in the same class, and it's fascinating to see how after 1 year, or 9 months actually, the graduates are rethinking their world. They're talking about getting next round funding. They're talking about the operations. They're talking about how there's always something changing in their business. Imagine how different that is from our journalistic world. They're always changing something. And they recognize that they're changing the business fundamentally. So that's kind of that part of the program. And we can talk about any of this anymore as you want. I'm going to skip the presentation stuff. Just the slides, and I'll just talk you through it. We also held 3 conferences at CUNY so far in New Business Models for News, and at one of them, Jim Brady, who at the time was at WashingtonPost.com as the editor, was in one of the groups, one of the breakout groups, because every conference has to have a breakout group, and was mapping out the newsroom of the future. And he sent me pictures from this the other day. He had a whiteboard, he had the numbers up on the whiteboard, and he said little did he think that at that moment what he was drawing he would later launch as TBD.com. TBD is a new local news site in Washington, started by Politico. It is associated with some TV stations in town, but otherwise it is a very entrepreneurial effort. And I think it's a very telling effort about the economics of news going forward. Brady has, I think, a total staff of 50. I think that's right, Mark, right? And a newsroom of about 35. He is working with a network of 150 bloggers in the DC area. His business goal is for the bloggers to succeed, because the more they succeed, the less he has to do with his spare resources. He also operates under my favorite bumper sticker line of my own, which is do what you do best and link to the rest. If you go to TBD, it is an excellent curation. One of our wonderfully overused words these days. It is a wonderful curation of news. So if the Washington Post does a great job on a story, he doesn't redo it. There's none of this egotistical thing that we used to have in print that we had to deliver it ourselves as well. He linked directly to the Post. Not to a summary of the Post, straight to the Post. Not to a summary of the blogger, straight to the blogger. So that's the ethic of the link in the link economy. He wants them to succeed. Now, compare Brady's enterprise with 50 people, 35 newsroom with Catherine Weymouth's The Washington Post, where my numbers are at all current about 750 in the newsroom and about probably 2,000 employees overall. Well, there's probably no way that Weymouth can resize, as we say, to the proper size for this new world. And she can start, Jim Brady can start from scratch here. So when we come to Europe and see very successful large enterprises, and some of them are still growing, and my friends in Europe say, well, we don't have that same problem. I don't know that that's true. I say you should look at us in America as the canary in the coal mine, and the canary has flopped over in the cage. Because this internet dynamic, and it's not just the classified died, it's not just that retail died, it's not just that people don't trust newspapers and aren't buying them as much. It's also that entrepreneurs can come in for very, very little money and disrupt you and do something more specialized and better. So when I want technology business news, yeah, I read the New York Times and it's pretty good, but TechCrunch is amazing. When I want media news, yes, the New York Times is pretty good, but paid content, Rafa, thank you very much, is phenomenal. And the New York Times cannot possibly match the depth of both. And that's why the Washington Post now runs TechCrunch content itself, which is smart to do. You should do best to link to the rest. But the point is that I think that if there were an entrepreneurial spirit here in Europe as well, and there is, that will bubble up at moments and will disrupt some of the old big players. And they'd best watch out for that. Or they'd best help it along. And I would argue that perhaps they should invest. So in Germany, Holzbrink has its lab and has been investing in companies, and I think that's a great idea. It's risky, it's hard. It's hard for companies to then take these ventures inside and do those things, but I think that there's a great deal of opportunity there.